Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Did you know that in the midst of Indonesia's hectic national election this year, there was one important but little noticed development in the national discourse on climate change? This took place in November last year when Indonesia's highest Islamic Council issued a fatwa on climate change. To put this in context, Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world. There are more Muslims in Indonesia than in the entire Middle East. Indonesia is also a significant country in the global climate change efforts. It has the third largest tropical rainforest in the world after Brazil and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is the world's seventh largest greenhouse gas emitter after Brazil. It is one of the fastest growing G20 economies, but with an economy that is still reliant heavily on fossil fuels, which make up about 85% of its national energy source. Indonesia is still struggling also to take coal out of its national energy mix. Meanwhile, its public, political, and corporate support for net zero transition remains shaky at best. Indonesia's net zero target is still at 2060 or earlier, and evidently not fully aligned with IPCC recommendations. It is against this background that Indonesian religious leaders and scholars in the Majelis of Indonesian Ulamas issued this fatwa. A fatwa is a religious order or ruling issued by an Islamic leader on certain issues relating to Islamic law, ethics, and practice. It is not legally binding and it is not enforceable, but it does present a judgment by Islamic leaders and scholars that Muslims are expected to follow. In the Islamic world, a central transnational authority does not exist. Different countries usually have their own council of Islamic leaders and scholars. And in Indonesia, it rests on the Majelis of Indonesian Ulamas. The Majlis delivers fatwas on a variety of issues that are of interest to Muslims in Indonesia, such as human rights, women's rights, social activities, business practice, food, drugs, technology, tourism, and many more. So it is a big deal that for the first time, the Majelis of Indonesian Ulamas produced a fatwa on climate crisis and recognize as well as warn of the impact of global climate change. It is also perhaps the first time ever an Islamic council in the world issued a fatwa obliging the general public to make concrete efforts towards equitable energy transitions by phasing out fossil fuels. And in Indonesia, this matters because according to surveys, religious leaders are much more trusted by the general public relative to politicians, officials, and celebrities. The fatwa effectively added a religious urgency as well as directive to the debate on climate change in Indonesia. It contained 10 pages and offer perspectives on climate change on the basis of 8 Quranic verses, 7 hadiths, and several qawaid fiqhiyah. Here are some of the rulings from the fatwa. Any action that causes damage to nature and impact the climate crisis are considered haram. Uncontrolled deforestation and forest burning that destroys natural ecosystems are also considered haram. To avert catastrophe, all parties, from central to local government, as well as the general public, are obliged to reduce carbon footprint and make efforts to achieve just energy transition. By the way, in Islam, if something is considered as haram, that means it is a sin, just like murder, stealing, and other major sins in Islam. But more than just passing judgment, the fatwa also made policy recommendations to the government, such as to launch a national program to ensure just energy transition and mobilizing the necessary financial resources for climate mitigation and adaptation, and to get serious to reach national and international climate targets. The fatwa is a significant boost to Indonesia's climate efforts because it adds a religious angle to the climate discourse, appealing to the moral and spiritual conscience of the people. This religious directive can help mobilize communities and individuals to take action against climate change in line with their faith. We hope that other Islamic councils in other countries, as well as religious institutions of different faith from around the world, will also take similar action to raise the alarm regarding climate change and urge everyone in their communities to undertake responsible and concrete climate actions. Thank you for listening. I'm Dino Patti Djalal. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.